I thought it was just another morning. The sun had barely risen over the quiet streets of Maplewood, and the air smelled faintly of dew and cut grass. I pulled into my mother's driveway, my stomach fluttering with the simple excitement of seeing my little girl again. I'd been gone for only one night, just one night away from her, but it felt like longer. My daughter, Leora, usually sprinted to me, hair wild, arms open, squealing my name like I'd been gone a lifetime. But this time she didn't run. She walked slowly, her small pink backpack clutched against her chest. Her teddy bear's ear dangled from her fingers, and her eyes, they didn't shine like they usually did. "Morning, baby," I whispered, kneeling with open arms. She leaned in, hugging me with a force that startled me. Her arms trembled as though she was afraid of letting go. I rubbed her back, whispering reassurances, though my chest was suddenly heavy. We walked to the car. She buckled herself in, another odd sign. Normally she argued playfully, saying she wanted me to do it. Today she was silent, her gaze fixed out the window. My pulse quickened, a mother's intuition scratching at the edges of my thoughts. Finally, her small voice broke the silence. "Mommy," she whispered, so soft I almost didn't hear. I leaned closer, heart pounding. "Grandma said I should never tell you what I saw." The world tilted around me. I gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles whitened. "Leora, sweetheart, what did you see?" She turned her big hazel eyes to me, the kind of eyes no child should ever carry such weight in. Her lips parted, trembling. She whispered a sentence that froze the air in my lungs. It was something so simple yet so wrong, so dangerous. My hands began to shake. I didn't argue. I didn't try to reason. I pulled my phone out, dialing 911 with trembling fingers, praying to God my daughter was safe and that whatever secret she carried would not destroy us both. And in that moment I knew. This was not just about my daughter anymore. This was about the kind of truth that could shatter an entire family. The dispatcher's voice felt distant, mechanical, like a radio echoing underwater. I gave her my name. Mara Ellison, 32, single mother, teacher at Brookdale Elementary. My words stumbled as I tried to explain. But how do you explain something so fragile, so terrifying, whispered from the lips of a 5-year-old? "Stay calm, ma'am," the voice instructed. "Officers are on the way. They come." The words rang hollow. How could I? My hands were trembling, my daughter's wide eyes locked on me, her fingers still gripping that old teddy bear. I wanted to ask her again, to make her repeat what she had said, but part of me was terrified to hear it a second time. The weight of it was already crushing. My mother, her grandmother, had always been a steady presence. Strict, yes, but dependable. She baked pies for church fundraisers, crocheted blankets for the women's shelter. She was the kind of woman neighbors trusted with house keys. But Leora's words made me question everything. What had she seen inside that house? What truth was hidden in the quiet suburban home where I had once grown up, where birthdays had been celebrated, where secrets now seemed to rot beneath the walls? As I drove toward home, every house we passed seemed strange, unfamiliar. White picket fences, kids on bicycles, sprinklers hissing over green lawns. All of it felt like a lie, a postcard covering something darker. My daughter stayed silent, her teddy bear crushed against her cheek. Memories flickered in my mind. My father's absence. How he left when I was 12. No explanation, no goodbye. My mother's cold answer whenever I asked. Some things are better left unsaid. Now I wondered, was this one of those things? I glanced at Leora in the rearview mirror. Her small lips moved, as if she wanted to say something more but couldn't. I pulled over, my chest rising and falling in uneven bursts. "Baby, it's okay. You can tell me." Her eyes filled with tears. She shook her head. "Grandma said, if I tell, bad things will happen." The words hit me harder than anything else. Fear wasn't just in her eyes, it was in her bones. By the time we pulled into our driveway, 2 police cruisers were already parked outside. Blue and red lights painted the street, flashing against the pale morning sky. Neighbors peeked through curtains, whispers no doubt forming behind closed doors. I unbuckled Leora, carrying her in my arms like I used to when she was smaller. She buried her face against my shoulder, trembling. I could feel her heartbeat through my shirt, rapid and uneven. 2 officers approached. One was tall, with sharp features and a name tag that read, Officer Danner. The other was younger, with warm brown eyes, introducing himself as Officer Hale. Their presence was steady, professional, yet I saw the flicker of concern when I explained the situation. "You did the right thing calling us," Officer Hale said, kneeling to Leora's height. "Sweetheart, can you tell us what you saw?" She pressed her face harder against me, shaking her head. I whispered, stroking her hair, "It's okay, baby. They're here to help." But her silence was unbreakable. The officers exchanged a glance, one that carried weight. Officer Danner straightened. "We'll need to speak with your mother, ma'am. And we'll likely need to check the grandmother's residence." My throat went dry. The thought of them walking into my mother's house felt surreal. That house held my childhood, my memories, every photograph, every scar. And now it might hold something unspeakable. As they asked more questions, I felt torn in 2 directions. One part desperate to uncover the truth, the other terrified of what it might mean for the only family I had left. When they finally left, promising to begin their investigation immediately, I carried Leora inside, sat her on the couch, and looked into her tear-filled eyes. "Sweetheart," I whispered, "whatever you saw, it doesn't make me stop loving Grandma. But I need you to trust me. Please." Her small voice cracked. "Mommy, I don't want Grandma to be mad at me." That night I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house, every shadow in the hallway pulled me deeper into fear. I sat by Leora's bed, watching her chest rise and fall, listening to her soft breaths. She clutched her teddy bear as if it were her lifeline. Memories of my mother played like old film reels. Her laugh when she baked apple pie. The way she'd brush my hair as a child, humming hymns under her breath. The sternness in her voice whenever I asked about my father. "Some stories don't need telling," she'd always say. Now those memories felt tainted. I couldn't reconcile the woman who raised me with the fear in my daughter's eyes. What did she see? And why would my mother tell her to keep it a secret? At dawn, I finally drifted off in the armchair by Leora's bed. A sound woke me, her small voice whispering in her sleep. I leaned closer, my skin prickling. She murmured words I barely caught. "The basement. Don't go in the basement." My heart stuttered. My childhood home had a basement I hadn't stepped foot in for years. It was always locked, always off limits. My mother said it was just storage, nothing for me to worry about. But I remembered the heavy padlock, the strange hum that sometimes echoed from beneath. Suddenly, pieces clicked together. My father's disappearance, my mother's warnings, and now my daughter's whispered fear. By the time the morning light poured through the blinds, my decision was made. I would return to that house. I would go into the basement. And I would uncover the truth, no matter what it cost me. I drove back to my mother's house before the sun fully rose. The streets empty except for the occasional newspaper delivery truck. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly I could feel my knuckles strain. Leora sat silently beside me, her teddy bear tucked in her lap. I didn't speak. There was nothing I could say that would make this easier. When we arrived, the air felt heavier, thicker than usual. The front door stood closed, ordinary but somehow menacing. I tried to push down the memory of the whispered warning. "Don't go in the basement." My stomach churned. Officer Danner was already there, pacing near the porch. He nodded when he saw me. "We've secured the house, but your daughter's statement is unusual. We'll need you to walk through everything she mentioned." I swallowed hard. "We need to find out what she saw. Even if it's bad," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Leora's hand found mine, tiny and trembling. I squeezed it back, silently promising I wouldn't let her face this alone. As we entered, the smell hit me first, a mixture of old wood, damp earth, and something faintly metallic. My mother's house had always smelled of cinnamon and vanilla, but now it was cold, unfamiliar. The officers began their search room by room, their radios clicking softly. Leora stayed close, peeking from behind my legs. Her eyes darted around as if she expected shadows to move or walls to whisper secrets. We reached the kitchen. Empty cupboards, neatly stacked dishes, the faint hum of the refrigerator. Everything normal. I relaxed slightly, but I knew the basement awaited. It had always been locked, and the heavy padlock still hung on the door. Officer Danner jiggled it, then pressed a key into my hand. This was found on a hook in the hallway. Maybe it'll help. I hesitated. My heart pounded against my chest. The basement door looked small, ordinary, but it felt like a threshold to another world. I glanced at Leora, whose eyes were wide and fearful. Taking a deep breath, I inserted the key and turned it. The lock clicked, and the air from below seemed to rise, carrying whispers of a past I had never truly known. The stairs creaked under my weight as I descended into darkness. My flashlight cut through shadows, revealing boxes, old furniture, and dust thick enough to choke on. I called softly, "Leora, stay close." The officers followed, their radios muted now, faces tense. Leora clung to my leg, her teddy bear bouncing against my thigh. "Mommy, it smells funny down here," she whispered. I nodded, gripping her hand tighter. The basement felt alive. Every shadow seemed to twitch. My eyes caught something unusual. Old photographs pinned haphazardly to the wall. Faces I recognized, faces I didn't, eyes staring accusingly from yellowed paper. Officer Hale moved toward a corner, uncovering a small wooden chest. Cobwebs clung to its edges. I froze as he opened it. Inside were stacks of letters, each sealed carefully. I recognized my mother's handwriting, looping and elegant, but the contents, I couldn't imagine. Leora whimpered, tugging at my sleeve. "Mommy, it's scary." I crouched, holding her close. "I know, baby. But we need to see the truth." The letters revealed a series of secrets. Hidden affairs, clandestine meetings, and mentions of people who had vanished without explanation. My mother's calm, collected exterior had always seemed trustworthy. Now each word screamed deception. One letter, dated shortly after my father disappeared, mentioned a mistake that cannot be undone, and a promise to keep the child safe at all costs. My pulse quickened. Was this related to him? To me? A chill ran down my spine as I realized these were not just ordinary family secrets. They were warnings, threats, and confessions wrapped in paper and ink. I turned to Leora. "Honey, did you see anyone else? Anyone in the house when Grandma was with you?" She shook her head violently, hugging her teddy bear tighter. "Just shadows, Mommy. Shadows moving." The basement air pressed closer, heavy with history. And I knew, without a doubt, that my mother had been hiding something unimaginable. We explored deeper, past the boxes and letters, until a door at the far end of the basement caught my attention. It was smaller than the main entrance, warped and swollen with age. I tried the handle, it wouldn't budge. A faint scratching sound came from inside. "Did you hear that?" I whispered. Leora nodded, tears streaming. Officer Danner motioned for silence, raising a hand. The scratching grew louder, more urgent. My stomach churned. Hale inspected the door, finding a rusty lock. He turned to me. "We'll break it open, but brace yourself. We don't know what's behind this." I nodded, gripping Leora's hand like my life depended on it, which in a way it did. The lock snapped under Hale's crowbar. The door creaked open to reveal a small, dimly lit room. The smell hit first, earthy, damp, metallic. And then I saw it. A child's drawing, pinned on the wall, crayon smudged, depicting a family in shadows, figures with blank faces. Leora gasped, pointing at the drawings. "Mommy, that's me. That's me with her." My heart stopped. The handwriting beneath read, "She sees everything. She must not tell." My mother's handwriting. My hand shook. I realized then that these weren't just letters or warnings. They were a record of someone's obsession, someone who had been watching, manipulating, controlling. Officer Danner called out from the corner. "There's something else here." He uncovered a stack of old videotapes, labeled with dates spanning years, each coinciding with Leora's birthdays and my father's absence. My blood ran cold. I remembered my mother's insistence on keeping the basement off-limits. Now I understood, this was never storage. This was a surveillance lair, a hidden chronicle of a life I thought I knew. Leora clung to me, trembling. "Mommy," she was watching me. I nodded, tears blurring my vision. "Yes, baby. But we're here now. I won't let anyone hurt you." We called in forensic experts to examine the tapes. Every frame confirmed my worst fear. My mother, or someone using her home, had been recording Leora, documenting her daily life, her habits, her innocence for years. The letters, the drawings, the tapes, all pointed to an obsession that went beyond control. My mother's stern demeanor, her warnings, her insistence on secrecy, they were all part of a twisted plan to keep us in line. Leora couldn't understand fully, but she felt the danger. I held her close as investigators catalogued evidence, her small body shaking against mine. "It's over now," I whispered. "Mommy's here. No one else can hurt you." The revelation hit me harder than grief. My childhood, my memories of warmth and safety, had been built over shadows of deception. My father's disappearance, my mother's coldness, all pieces of a larger, darker puzzle. I realized something even more terrifying. If my daughter hadn't spoken, if she had kept silent, none of this would have come to light. The secrecy had been deliberate, cultivated over time. As officers moved through the house, the sense of betrayal weighed heavily. The person I had trusted most had become the architect of a hidden nightmare. I knew I had to protect Leora, shield her innocence from the fallout, even if it meant severing the ties of blood forever. At that moment I vowed, I would rebuild our lives from the ashes of lies, no matter how painful the truth. In the days after the basement discovery, life felt fractured. Leora and I stayed at a friend's house, her small hand always gripping mine, eyes scanning every shadow. I couldn't stop replaying her whispered words. "Grandma said never tell." Those 6 words had unraveled everything I thought I knew. The investigators found additional evidence. Hidden cameras, coded diaries, and even recordings of phone calls my mother had intercepted. Each piece was a puzzle of control, manipulation, and obsession. My stomach churned, but my resolve hardened. I would protect my daughter at all costs. Leora seemed to sense the danger even without understanding it. She stopped playing outside, stopped laughing at cartoons she once loved. Her teddy bear became a shield, and I became the only source of comfort in a world that suddenly seemed hostile. At night I would sit by her bed, stroking her hair, whispering reassurances. "Mommy's here. No one can touch you anymore." She clung to me, eyes wide, searching my face for safety. I began to confront the reality of my own upbringing. My mother's strict rules, her cold authority, they weren't normal discipline. They were preparation, conditioning me to obey, to fear, to silence my own instincts. Even memories of my father felt tainted. Had he known? Had he tried to stop it before he vanished? The questions haunted me like shadows, impossible to answer. One evening, as rain tapped against the windows, Leora drew a picture of our new home. No shadows, no faceless figures, just her small stick figure smiling. I hugged her tightly, tears streaking my face. It was a reminder. Despite the darkness, there was light. Despite the secrets, we could reclaim innocence. But the basement, the letters, the tapes, they were still there, a lingering threat. I knew I couldn't rest until every hidden corner was exposed. And deep down, I feared that uncovering the final piece of this puzzle would break something inside us. Something we might never recover. Weeks passed, and the investigation continued. Officers interviewed neighbors, old family friends, even distant relatives. Patterns emerged. My mother had been obsessively documenting lives for decades, targeting children she felt responsible for controlling. I felt a mixture of anger, sorrow, and disbelief. How could someone who raised me, who baked me birthday cakes, hold such a shadowed life? My memories were tainted with doubt, every happy moment now suspect. Leora slowly adjusted to the temporary home. She laughed again at cartoons, built block towers, and asked endless questions about animals and school. Each laugh was a small victory, a reclaiming of the joy my mother tried to steal. I stayed vigilant, checking every nook of our temporary home. Every creak, every shadow, every stranger's knock made me tense. My protective instincts had sharpened to an almost painful edge. One evening, while unpacking boxes, I found a letter addressed to me from my father, written before his disappearance. His words were cautious, cryptic. If you ever feel the weight of her control, follow the clues. They will guide you to safety. My heart raced. Could he have known? Could this have been a warning, meant to help me protect my daughter? I hugged the letter to my chest, feeling a connection to a father I had barely known. Leora peeked into the room, holding her teddy bear. "Mommy, are we safe now?" I smiled softly, brushing her hair back. "Yes, baby. Safe as we can be. And I promise, I'll keep you safe forever." But even as I whispered those words, a creeping doubt lingered. My mother's reach, her obsession, it had extended farther than I realized. Every step forward was haunted by the past. Every moment of peace felt fragile, like a thin layer of glass over a pit of darkness. I knew we were still only at the beginning. One rainy afternoon, the police called with new findings. My mother had an accomplice, someone who had helped her manipulate and monitor lives from the shadows. The revelation made my stomach drop. I hadn't only been betrayed by family. There was a network of deceit I hadn't imagined. Leora sat on the couch, watching cartoons with distracted eyes. I knelt beside her, trying to keep calm. "Baby, we're going to be okay. Mommy's in control now," I said. She nodded slowly, hugging her teddy bear. I pored over police reports, noting connections, timelines, and every hidden camera's location. The accomplice's identity was unclear, but the pattern was terrifyingly methodical. My mother had prepared everything meticulously, anticipating discovery, covering tracks, erasing proof. That night, Leora had a nightmare. She cried out, "Mommy, shadows are in my room." I held her close, stroking her hair, whispering assurances. "It's okay, baby. Mommy's here. No one can hurt you." I realized how fragile childhood innocence truly was. The same innocence my mother had exploited, manipulated, and nearly destroyed. My daughter's laughter was now a shield against that darkness. I spent hours awake, planning, strategizing, imagining every possible scenario. Every detail mattered. Every misstep could cost us safety and peace. The next morning, the officers informed me they had traced financial transactions to the accomplice, suggesting someone with access to my mother's accounts and secrets. My pulse quickened. Someone else was part of this twisted plan. I felt anger surge through me, a protective fire I hadn't known I could feel. They had targeted my daughter. They had tried to control our lives. And I wouldn't let them win. For the first time, I understood the scope of what my daughter had whispered that morning. This was far bigger than a hidden basement. It was a life built on fear and secrecy. Determined to reclaim our home and lives, I returned to the house with the officers once more. Leora stayed with a trusted friend, shielded from the confrontation. Every step inside felt surreal. Empty rooms, silent walls, a house that looked normal but held decades of dark secrets. I made my way to the basement, flashlight in hand. Dust swirled in the narrow beam, memories and evidence mingling. Officer Danner followed closely, his expression serious. Hale carried a box of confiscated letters and photographs. I noticed a hidden panel in the wall, partially concealed behind a shelf. My fingers traced the edge, revealing a small compartment. Inside were notebooks, journals, meticulously detailed accounts of every child my mother had ever observed. Each page chronicled habits, fears, and routines, some dated decades back. Felt nausea rise. My mother had not only manipulated my family but countless others. Her obsession was monumental, frightening, and deeply personal. Officer Danner cleared his throat. We need to secure all of this. It's evidence of long-term abuse and surveillance. I nodded, feeling a mix of relief and horror. I walked through the basement slowly, pausing at a corner where Leora's drawings had been. They were gone, replaced by blank walls, but the memory remained, etched into my mind. It was then I realized something even darker. My mother's accomplice had left traces of their presence elsewhere, likely monitoring us still. The danger hadn't ended. It had only shifted. I exhaled slowly, trying to steady myself. Protecting Leora meant vigilance, courage, and relentless determination. My daughter's safety depended on me, and I wouldn't falter. The basement, once a hidden prison of secrets, had become a battleground, and I was ready to fight. The days that followed were tense and relentless. I spent hours poring over police reports, maps, and notes, trying to trace every step of my mother and her accomplice. Leora watched silently from a corner, her small hands fidgeting with her teddy bear. Every shadow felt suspicious. Every knock at the door made me startle. Even routine sounds, the hum of the refrigerator, the clatter of dishes, made my heart race. I couldn't let my guard down, not for a second. I began contacting families who had unknowingly been watched. Their faces reflected the same mix of disbelief and fear I had felt. Some had no idea their private lives had been meticulously chronicled, their children observed. Leora asked questions sometimes, her voice small and uncertain. "Mommy, is Grandma going to come back?" I shook my head gently. "No, baby. We're safe now. And no one can hurt us anymore." Yet in the quiet moments I doubted that. The accomplice had left traces, and my mother's influence lingered like a shadow I couldn't fully dispel. One evening I found an old key hidden in a book, its label, "Do not lose." My pulse quickened. Was there another secret I hadn't yet uncovered? I shared my find with the officers. They exchanged concerned glances. "Mara, if this opens another room or compartment, we need to be ready," Officer Danner said. Leora, sitting nearby, seemed to sense the tension. She clutched her teddy bear, eyes wide. "Mommy, it's another secret," she whispered. I pulled her close. "Maybe, baby. But if it is, we'll face it together." The house felt like a labyrinth of shadows, each corner hiding untold stories. And I had to uncover every one. That night sleep eluded me. I replayed every whispered word from Leora. Grandma said never tell. Each repetition made the warning sharper, more urgent. I couldn't ignore it, couldn't pretend the danger had ended. The key fit into a small hidden door in the hallway, behind a faded painting. It clicked open to reveal a narrow staircase spiraling downward. Dust rose in faint clouds, and the smell of damp earth filled my nostrils. Officer Hale and Danner followed, flashlights slicing through the darkness. I held the beam steady, my heart hammering. Leora's words had prepared me in a way I didn't fully understand. This was where my mother had kept her most guarded secrets. At the bottom of the staircase, we found a room smaller than the previous basement section. Yet it was filled with strange artifacts. Journals, photographs, and even clothing items marked with dates and names. My mother's obsessive documentation was more sinister than I imagined. Officer Danner held up a photograph. "Mara, this is from years ago. Do you recognize these children?" I studied the faces, heart sinking. Some were completely unknown, some vaguely familiar. My mother's reach had extended far beyond our family. Leora's small voice broke the silence. "Mommy, is she still watching us?" I hugged her, whispering, "No, baby. Promise. She can't touch us anymore." But deep down, I knew the accomplice was still out there. Someone had helped my mother execute her plans, and they might still be observing our lives. We catalogued everything carefully, moving items into boxes for the authorities. Each artifact told a story of obsession, fear, and control that chilled me to the bone. I realized protecting Leora wasn't just about stopping my mother. It was about unmasking everyone who had enabled her. And the longer I waited, the higher the stakes became. Over the next few days, Leora slowly returned to normal. She laughed at cartoons, built towers of blocks, and asked endless questions about her new school. Each giggle felt like a small victory, a reclaiming of the innocence my mother had tried to destroy. But at night she still whispered. "Mommy, shadows," she murmured, clutching her teddy bear. I would stroke her hair and whisper, "It's okay, baby. Mummy's here. No one can touch you." I began reviewing the videotapes again. Patterns emerged. The accomplice had been meticulous, observing, recording, even predicting reactions. Every smile, every cry, every tantrum of Leora's life had been documented. The officers traced phone calls, emails, and transactions. Slowly, a profile emerged. Someone calculating, patient, and deeply connected to my mother. But their identity remained a mystery, taunting me with its elusiveness. One afternoon I received a letter in the mail. No return address, nothing. Inside was a single note. "You're getting too close." My stomach dropped. The accomplice knew we were uncovering the truth. I showed it to Danner. "They're watching," I said, voice trembling. He nodded grimly. "Yes. And they won't stop until they're stopped." Leora, unaware of the letter, sat coloring in the corner. Her small fingers moved with precision, oblivious to the storm surrounding us. I envied her innocence. But I knew innocence alone couldn't protect her. I had to act. I had to finish uncovering the network my mother had built. And somewhere in the shadows, the accomplice was waiting, biding their time. I clenched my fists, knowing confrontation was inevitable. I returned to my mother's house one last time, accompanied by a full investigative team. Every room, every corner, every hidden compartment was examined. The house no longer felt like a home. It was a gallery of obsession and fear. Officer Hale led me to a locked cabinet in the master bedroom. Inside, we found letters, financial records, and correspondences between my mother and her accomplice. The pattern of manipulation became undeniable. My hands shook as I read. The accomplice had been preparing for this moment, anticipating discovery, planning contingencies. My mother hadn't acted alone. Then a breakthrough. A name appeared repeatedly. Someone I never would have suspected, someone close to our family all along. The realization hit me like a punch. Betrayal ran deeper than I imagined. Leora sat in the back seat of the car, clutching her teddy bear. She sensed my tension, and I held her small hand tightly, whispering reassurances. "It's over now, baby. Mommy's in control." But the officers warned me. This was far from over. The accomplice was real, dangerous, and had a plan we had yet to fully uncover. I understood then that this was bigger than fear, bigger than betrayal. It was about survival, protection, and reclaiming our lives from someone who had manipulated us for decades. The weight of it pressed down on me, but I refused to falter. Leora's safety, her innocence, and our future depended on me. And I knew that the final confrontation was coming.